What's going on, everybody? Art Eddie here for another edition of the Art of Fatherhood podcast. And it's not just another edition, it's a great episode. We're going to have so many great conversations, not just one guest, but we have three great guys talking about work-life balance and how we can be advocates for moms coming back into the workforce and so many different things, and just creating a family-friendly workspace and supporting parents and work-life integration. And so we're going to be talking to them about a whole wide range of topics. You can catch us out on YouTube and our podcast and all over at the Art of Fatherhood. So I'm going to bring these guys on one at a time. We're going to be talking about different things that they have experienced, certain things that they're looking to do. But again, I want to thank March of Dimes and Medela to be a proud sponsor of today's podcast. Both are actively working to address problems that families face when trying to find work-life balance in today's post-pandemic world. We all know, we've all heard certain stories about getting back into the actual workforce and getting actual back to the building and not just commuting, telecommuting and all that. So a lot of different things and a lot of different pieces of advice and views from these three great gentlemen. So let's bring them on right now. The first guest, you might have heard him before if you check out the Art of Fatherhood podcast, is none other than Jeff Castillo. He's over at Medela, and we're also going to talk with David Holstein. He is over at NeoCall. And then we have a children's book author and cybersecurity expert, Malcolm Newsome. And I'm going to bring on Jeff Castillo, not just because he was on here first. I'm not showing any love to, former guests and all that, but
You
we're going to bring
should.
on Jeff first. He is the executive vice president of the Americas at Medela. Jeff, would you mind sharing a few words before we begin, sir?
Yeah, Art, thank you for having me back on. I think that's a good sign. But I enjoyed our first one so much. I enjoyed working with you, and I'm honored to be part of this panel with such distinguished guests like Malcolm and David. So I'm looking forward to this one. But we're at the same place we were when we talked a few months back. I'm a father of four, grandfather of five, advocate of fatherhood and all that it represents, only because I realized some areas I could have been better, and also finding some gaps in our society that could allow fathers to be more involved. And Medela is committed to that. We're committed to families and reaching their personal breastfeeding goals, and I support that. So I'm very blessed to be here and working with Medela in crusading this on behalf of fathers and how they can support moms and breastfeeding moms more specifically.
Yeah, you guys do such a great job. Since I started, connecting with a lot of people over at Medela, especially on LinkedIn, there's a lot of resources that so many people share, and you guys are raising awareness for certain topics that I might not have heard of, and I wish, or maybe when my wife was nursing and all that. So you guys seriously not only talk the talk but walk the walk, and I really appreciate everything you guys do. So if people listening to this don't follow you guys on social media or especially LinkedIn, you guys have a lot of great resources and things there. So thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you,
Uh,
Art.
yeah, no doubt. And now I'd like to bring on David Holstein. He's the Chief Revenue Officer at NeoCall. How you doing, David?
I am doing wonderful. Thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to this. A bit about my story and how I got here. I'm a loving and proud husband and father. My wife's name's Kaylee. I like to say I've got three children. Two are with us. One is in heaven. A bit about our story. We had our second child, had him for a couple hours. We had the opportunity to hold him, sing to him, and let him pass in our arms. And the reason I'm excited to be here is I recall my time back in that moment and going through the grieving process and thinking to myself, how do I put the pieces together for my 2-year-old son, for my wife, for my family and friends around me, and then also at work, but then also allow myself the space to grieve. And I didn't have that network. I didn't know who to tap into, who to talk to. I didn't have something like this. And I wish maybe I just wasn't searching hard enough and I was kind of frozen in that moment. But having something like this would have allowed me to grieve a little more openly and feel like it was okay. So I'm really happy to kind of share more of my experience here, and hoping that it touches a few other people.
Thank you very much, Dave, for sharing that. I know it's really tough, and it's just even every time you bring it up, there's got to be painful memories and all that. But again, thank you. And I know our next guest can share similar stories with you as well. It's none other than Malcolm Newsome. He's a cybersecurity expert, but also he's a children's book author that we're going to get into his book. And I highly suggest that while you're listening to this podcast or watching it, go to Amazon and pick up his book, and we'll put up links over at artoffatherhood.net. But Malcolm, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Art, and thank you as well to the March of Dimes and Medela for sponsoring this wonderful conversation. Uh, Jeff, it's great to be in your presence, David as well, and yeah, I'm also I'm a father of five, married for 14 years, and it's I have kind of, from a work standpoint, I have kind of an interesting journey of, um, yeah, having multiple careers, having spent time as an entrepreneur as well, but then kind of rising through the ranks and becoming an executive vice president at a firm, and then transitioning into cybersecurity. So I have lots of thoughts as it pertains to work and work life balance, especially for being somebody who's been driven. And then especially as if we touch on the theme of working through difficult circumstances, especially grieving, and in our cases, grieving through miscarriage. And so that's ultimately what's spawned the book, Dear Star Baby. It was about my experience and our experience with miscarriage, but then also the things that I learned kind of along the way, in talking to others and hearing about others' experiences as well.
Yeah. Again, all three of you, thank you for your time. I know you guys are very busy, but again, these are topics that must be, discussed, and it'll help other people. We obviously, like, just like when we're with our kids, we teach them things to make sure that they go into this world a better place. Right. And I'm guessing this podcast, people will listen to this and take a lot of positive things away from it, from the experience you guys had. So again, really appreciate the time on such a, busy week for all of you guys. But Jeff, let's start with you at Medela. How do you support families in achieving like work-life balance?
Yeah, that's a great question, Art. And I would say the first thing we do is to make sure we provide quality products that have science in its backing. And so we're just not a person that looks for a pump or brings it, exports it or imports it. We are a person that actually use science in developing our products, and we keep mothers and babies on the forefront on everything we do. And that's good. That's been good and bad, Art. That's, we've been slow to market on some areas, and we've also have been revolutionary on some aspects of the market, right? We're very prevalent in the hospitals, where mom's first interaction potentially with breastfeeding happens with a baby, and or nutrition through mother's milk is extremely important in the NICU. So we touch all aspects of that. And the best thing we could do is ease of use, make sure adoption comes easy, and that we do a great job. The other area that we do is we make sure that we have an infrastructure that supports families in the breastfeeding journey. And what does that mean? That means numerous things. Making sure that fathers take an active role and have the ability to take an active role. Very important. We talked about that earlier on. Also, there's other members of the family that come around this newborn child, and we want to make sure that we provide educational tools that mom can walk them through and understanding what this means coming into a family. We also make sure that we lead by example, and this is important, Art, with our own employees, that we give them the opportunities and flexibilities. And it's sometimes little things and sometimes it's bigger things. Like, for example, we have reserved parking lots for lactating moms, to make sure that they have a place reserved where they know they could park in a rush or whatever. We also offer 16 full weeks of pay to parents. So when parents walk away, they have 16 full weeks of payment. We have dedicated lactation spaces within our office environment. We support any moms needing to travel. If they need their breast milk to be shipped to a potential place where a parent will be at, we will aid in that. And return to work bonus for those moms coming back. So we provide that, we let them know we're not only happy to have them back, but here's a bonus and appreciation of the time and efforts you put in support of your family and baby. And then we're also advocates. We're advocates with the government. We want to make sure that the government sees us as an example and make these things accessible to all moms returning back to work.
Yeah, like I said earlier, you guys do such a great job. And the fact that one of the things you said earlier, and you and I talked about this last time about like a microwave society where things happen, like you got to quickly get them out there. But the fact that you guys are taking time, obviously, you love to get your products out there and give them to people in that need them. But the fact that you guys are taking time to make sure this is a legit product and helping others. So again, really appreciate that. And I think all of us here being dads, we understand that patience is a virtue, and we've learned that. So there is time to do something really fast, and then also time to slow things down. So totally appreciate that.
Yes.
Malcolm, like you said, you have 5 children. So 2 questions for you. How do you manage right now, like a juggling act of your professional responsibilities as and then also being a dad? And then the second thing is, what kind of support do you give at home with while you're trying to manage those dual responsibilities? Because I always joke, when someone has a new kid, the parents are playing man to man, or actually zone, and then when you have 2 kids, you're playing man to man, and then you have more kids, you're in a zone, you're like, all right, who's getting what now? So you are definitely playing in a full man zone right now. So talk a little bit about how you do all of that, sir.
Yeah. So one thing that one thing that has helped me greatly is the environment that I work at now. At the company is called Gemini, and it's first of all great to work for a company and with a company that at its core values work-life balance. And so I'm fortunate in that, for example, we are a company that has unlimited PTO, right? And like it's truly unlimited PTO. Like if we need to take time off, nobody questions it. There aren't any like backdoor sneaky, you know, time tracking things, or you don't have to worry about the hammer crushing down on you later. And so because of that, we have an environment where people take work seriously, and when you have that level of trust. But what that also means is, on a day-to-day basis, I feel like I have the kind of the time and space to work and be productive, but then also leave work at work when I'm done. And so that has enabled me to be present with my family outside of work hours. And I also want to acknowledge here that didn't come that came at a kind of a cost for me, because previous to coming to this role, I mentioned earlier that I had previously been an executive vice president for a firm, and really, trying to climb that corporate ladder, so to speak, right? And it really became, I hit a juncture where I had to make a decision. And that was, I had a kind of a budding interest in writing and pursuing traditional publishing. And I knew that I wanted creative energy and time for that. But at the time, I was burning out at work too. And my evenings were limited in terms of time with family and also creative energy. And so I made the choice to kind of leave that corporate ladder pursuit, and take a chance at something else that I had an interest in, which happened to be cybersecurity. And so I think at its core, to kind of answer that question, I feel like I have the time and space because of making that difficult decision before. And it turned out to be the kind of the right decision. And then as we on a day-to-day basis, I feel like the lengths I go to protect that kind of sacred time with my family, sacred time for creating and reading, and that those are things that have just become a priority in my life that I protect and I guard, so.
Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing that. No, I was just saying, thank you very much for sharing that. And also too, what a great learning example that you can teach your kids about. Yeah, do I try and race up the corporate ladder and other things will fall on the wayside? But you're like, no, with everything that you have experienced as a dad, a husband, and you were like, nope, this is what I'm going to pursue. And yeah, it's not an easy choice, but like you said, like you appreciate more things about your current company now with the unlimited PTO, and you're not going to waste it by doing something silly. Like if you need to take the time, you'll take the time. But like, it's such a great way to teach your kids how to prioritize things in their lives. Now, there are things they might like things different than you do and prioritize certain things, but you're giving them like a great roadmap and be like, hey, doesn't always have to like follow the Joneses per se, right? So well done on that, sir.
Yeah, thanks. It's at the core is kind of this the teaching of prioritizing mission and purpose rather than, money, for example.
Well done. Love that. David, we know that you and your wife both have demanding careers. We also know that you're an advocate for father-centric support groups and conversations. Being in this parenting space, I've seen the value of dads and their groups and just being there for each other. So you're preaching the choir, sir. So I really appreciate what you're doing. You also bring up conversations on gender roles and responsibilities and making sure that they evolve, not just, from back in the past, but they're, instead of like, dad 2.1, we're at dad 5.0, where we're actually making sure that we're staying with the times and making sure that we're supporting our spouses. So talk about what you've done further to address these unique issues that fathers face.
Yeah, I think there's probably a couple different things. I think about it both personally and professionally. On a professional level, when I was going through everything that we went through, my wife and I was at a company of 15-ish people. So there wasn't a whole lot of policies and procedures that were really in place to meet the new demands that I had upon myself for the very first time. I didn't know where to turn. And I think, unfortunately, it takes situations like that amongst your employee base. That's going to those situations will kind of rock the boat in the most positive ways to make sure that policies change moving forward. So immediately we started to see, and I was kind of leading the charge for updated policies and procedures. And we've done that every single year for the last 5 years, which has been great. Outside of that, though, there needs to be, outside of paperwork, there needs to be a culture that allows people to feel safe and okay not being okay. And especially I find, particularly in men and males, it's really difficult to go onto a conversation with a lot of other males in the room and be really vulnerable in that way, right? To shed a tear in front of another guy, right? And say, I'm struggling today. This is what I've got going on in my life. So I felt it was important for me to, when we were going through that, instead of hiding behind it and just working through it, which, don't get me wrong, I worked through it and I had my own faults through my grieving process, but I still openly spoke about what happened to essentially give myself the space to not be okay, so that if and when a moment hit me and I needed to feel that grief for a moment, that I'd already kind of forewarned everyone, and I didn't have that little thing in my mind saying, oh my gosh, if I break down in this call, it's going to be awkward. So everyone was kind of there and understood where I was, but moving forward, that allowed other people, whether it was a similar situation or any other grief they had in their life, a loss of a friend, a family member, or anything else going on, that they could pull me aside and share with me what was going on in their world. And that allowed me to be a better manager, leader, colleague to them, and in that process. And then on the personal side, you face similar things on the personal side. And I actually found that I got the same group of guy friends for about 20 some odd years. I'm extremely lucky. And for the first time, we're getting to the age where our problems are significant. It's not, I just broke up with my very first girlfriend, hard conversations. It's loss. And for the very first time, having a friend out for a beer and sitting at a bar and saying nothing because you had nothing to say, and your friend being okay with that, or your friend leaning over to hug you for the very first time. I mean, I don't mean like, hey, what's going on, man? It's good to see you again. I mean, deeply hug you because you're going through problems. And so for me, it's been about opening up the conversation and letting the dialogue happen in a really safe spot. That's been the difference maker, not just the policies.
Great work you're doing. I really appreciate that, David. Yeah. And especially, again, like I said earlier, like post-pandemic, there's a lot of different things that we've all experienced and gone through, and the way that we maybe interact is totally different than before. And so having that moment, like you said, where even if you don't know what to say, but just being there and like you said, having a beer or just chatting with them about non-important stuff just to kind of get through the day or something like that. So really appreciate that. Jeff, for you, with over 25 years with experience and all that, how would you suggest a workplace go about fostering environment? Because people might hearing this like, oh, like whether you're a man or a woman listening to this, and you're like, oh, I'd love to have those certain policies and all that. Sometimes people are like, it's just cloud talk, but how do you actually make it work where they can take what they've learned from this podcast or this video and actually bring it to their company and be like, hey, these people are talking about successful stories about being a safe environment, of being an environment where they care about us, a company actually cares about us. Kind of talk a little bit about how companies should go about implementing things and like procedures to make sure people feel appreciated.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to say it always starts at the top. You know, people have to identify with the person who's leading the charge, that they get it to some extent, you know, and just listening to both David and Malcolm today, you constantly are learning new things, and you got to be open to that and understand that not everybody's walked in your shoes, or you haven't walked in everybody else's shoes, right? But it doesn't mean that these things aren't reality in the world. And the need to give the flexibility to individuals like these two, or the masses of others, is to understand, hey, they may find themselves in a tough situation, right? Here we are, and I shared this earlier with you. We do a lot with babies in the NICU, and that just goes, you know, if someone in this organization is dealing with that situation, and it's very stressful because I've dealt with it myself, you want to make sure that there's no other thing keeping them from that support that that mom and baby may need. So we don't ask questions when we know there's a situation like that. We expect that person to be fully involved in that situation and supportive of that, because we're so aware of it. You know, and then positive reinforcement. We recognize individuals within our organization who have had to face certain challenges with parenting, and we honor and respect those people that step out of the corporate boundaries in support of that. You know, so it's important to me. You know, if you looked at my LinkedIn, if you're associated with my LinkedIn, I personalize a lot of it. You know, I talk about my family. I talk about the calling. I call this a calling, not a job, because for me, you said 25 years of experience. You're correct. I had a lot of choices, but for whatever reason, I've been brought to this opportunity, and I understand why. You know, I want to make a difference, and I want to make sure we make a difference.
Yeah, and you guys are just, again, like I know we both mentioned like following you on LinkedIn, but again, you are walking the walk with all the talk you guys are talking over at Medela. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Now, David and Malcolm, this is something that I've never experienced, and I'm sorry that you both have. And it's even hard for me to talk about something that I've never experienced, and the pain that you and your family must have gone through. You have both had the experience of losing a children and a child, and I'm so sorry for that. I talk with dads who have similar stories, but it never gets easier talking about this. And I really appreciate you both being brave to talk about this, because I know, like I said, other people, once they say like, it's not just me, I didn't experience this alone, other people have, and they're listening to your story. So I appreciate that. Malcolm, we can start with you. Just talk about your experience, how you were. We always have that idea, maybe stereotypically, that dads have to be the rock and we have to be the one there for everybody, but who's going to be there for you? So talk a little bit about your experience, and just share if you don't mind. And again, I appreciate it.
Yeah. As I listened to David speaking, I, there's definitely some commonality there in the way that one of the things that happens, I think, especially with miscarriage in particular, is that especially early miscarriage, is that in our society, we're really taught to pretty much not tell anybody until after the first trimester, right? So don't share the news in case something bad happens, because miscarriage is that common. And so my wife and I, we followed that advice, and the first kind of major big miscarriage we had happened at 11 weeks. And because of that, hardly anybody knew. And so I found myself in this situation where I needed to go to work, and work didn't even really know, knowing that work even really knew my wife was pregnant. So I had to kind of like share the entire story. It worked out for me at that time, in that I shared with a person at HR because I'm like, I'm gonna need to take some time away. And that person, I'm very grateful for, because what she did was then connect me with another male who happened to be a leader at the company, and say, hey, if it's okay with you, I'd love to connect you both, because he's been through that too. And so I found that I was able to get some support, because of opening up and sharing, but also because of this person's willingness to make a connection for me. And I think without that, it's hard to say how much more difficult it would have been for me, because through that conversation, I started to learn about like how widespread this is, and it's miscarriage is a thing that even today it's starting to grow more now, where people are a little bit more open about it, but 10 years ago it wasn't quite there yet. And so yeah, this kind of suffering and silence has a way of permeating like our entire lives, and so to kind of like break out of that, it takes a whole lot. That point of vulnerability itself takes a whole lot. But then I think there's that encouragement there that once we do that, especially when it's a safe space, loving environments, and that's where healing can begin.
Thank you. And David, I'm going to ask you in a quick second, but just Malcolm, for those who are listening to this and maybe are on the fence of like, do I share it with someone or someone at work, or do I share with a friend? When that person at HR is like, oh, would you want me to connect you with someone? Was it instantly, again, like, just because I want to go on your guys' experience, like, did they say something like, yeah, I have someone to connect if you want? Did you mean like, yeah, sure? Or did you take a little while and like, do I want to do this? Do I want to share my vulnerability? If you don't mind answering that, just because in the sense of like, it's not like sometimes you look at like, hear a story like, oh, it's a snap decision, sure, I'll do this. But did it take a little bit for you to be like, yeah, I should do this?
So the way it worked out for me is that in that conversation, I had to kind of, I was open to it,
Okay.
and so I expressed, yes, I'm okay with this. But then I didn't know who it was, so she had to go to him and get his approval to kind of make the connection, right? And so there's a little bit of time and space in that, making sure that he was okay with this too. But I don't remember it being very long. I think it was within the span of like that work day that we then got to, were able to get together and talk.
Thank you for sharing that. David, talk a little bit about your experience, if you wouldn't mind, sir.
Yeah, of course. I think I'm actually, to be honest, a good example of what not to do. Because I believe that looking back on it now, and hindsight being what it is, the reason why I'm doing things like this is to avoid what if I look back at myself, what I was going through for the first 6 to 9 months. Had I had an outlet like this, I think it probably would have helped me process a little bit better. I think one thing that I struggle with is, the idea of fatherhood feels to me like a very deeply rooted social construct, that the father needs to be this rock. They need to work, they need to provide, and everyone else can break down except the father. And you've got to work your way through it. And there's part of that that I love. I do love working hard. I take pride in the fact that I can provide for my family in a lot of ways, not just financially, but emotionally, in so many other ways. But that wouldn't allow me to take that hat off. And I struggled there. And I tried a couple of different things, right off the bat, getting back into church. I've always had, I'm a religious person. I've always had my own relationship with God, whether I was in church or not, but I started to go more to learn more. Found out that I was pretty angry. I tried to go to group therapy, one-on-one therapy, and I think I tried that all so early that I hadn't even processed anything that had happened quite yet. So it was all just this big blur of all the emotions, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. I think I think another thing that really impacted me, and it's something that it stands out in my mind when I recall the way that I felt at the time, is it's speaking specifically around the social construct, is people would call me and I'd pick up the phone and we'd talk, and the question would be, how's Kaylee doing? And don't get me wrong, I'm so happy that my wife had the army of prayer warriors that she had, because she needed it. And we got meals and we got flowers. I think people are doing what they believe was helping us. And to some extent it was. But internally, I'm like, no one is yet to call me and ask me how I'm doing. And so it's odd to have to call people and say, I'm not doing well. Can we talk about this? I need someone. So I look back on it now and I feel like, yes, the social construct needs to be challenged personally and professionally in policies and the way we lead people, whether you're a direct leader in an organization or you're just a leader as a human. We need to challenge these social norms to help fathers in particular process this type of grief personally and professionally.
Thank you both for sharing that. And again, I think that what you said, like breaking down the social norms and the constructs, right? And for you to be like, I kind of felt weird being like, I need some help, or like, I'm glad they're reaching out to my wife, but what about me? And we almost will have that, like, just listening to you, like I could, if I put myself in your situation, I'm like, yeah, I need some help. Like, am I being selfish because she was the one that was carrying the baby and all that? So you're almost
Totally.
second guessing yourself, right? And you're just like, I need help, but do I need help? Right? Like, or do I need support, or how do I get the support? Or should I just kind of, kind of be in silence and pain and all that? So again,
Yep.
you said you kind of did the wrong way, but you obviously ended up in the right way you needed to get there. It just took a little bit longer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's right.
Again, thank you, gentlemen, for that. So Jeff, I kind of want to switch now, talking about how we as dads and fathers can be advocates for people. Like I said, when I started working with you guys earlier this year, I realized, man, like I wish, if I was in a space where I knew someone was coming back from, pregnancy and all that and baby, like, okay, how can I be an advocate? Right. And like, if I'm kind of uncomfortable, maybe go to HR. You and I had a really great conversation about how we can be advocates. So for those who might not have checked out that episode, please share the work that you guys are doing and pass on some good procedures or policies that have worked for you that can work in any environment.
Yeah, and I'm gonna almost build off the foundation that Malcolm and David just laid for us, but it's being present. And the strength of being present is so important, and not assuming that you are present and in reality you're not, right? And David spoke to that, and a good friend of mine who also lost a child, who wrote a book called Sometimes the Rock Must Crumble, right? It's, you have to have that vulnerability in order to be that support, right? You have to deal with yourself somewhat in order to bring back that foundation to family. And the same goes here. Art, why am I an advocate of this? Because I probably failed in many aspects of it as a father. And what I see my kids doing today, especially my boys, I'm proud of the things they did that I did not do. I'll never forget my oldest son. I called him one day and I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, I'm here with Nora and Ross. My wife went off to an event." And I said, "Oh, so you're babysitting?" He goes, "Dad, no, fathers don't babysit."
I love that. I had to jump in. I absolutely love that. That is so true.
Oh man, you talk about humility, guys. It brought me down it chopped me down, right? And he was right. And what he said was, "This is not babysitting to me. I'm being present." So as an executive for Medela, and as a father and as a grandfather, I want to be present. And I want to make sure that I'm in touch as much as possible and I learn from my mistakes, right? And I support those around us in making sure they don't make the same ones.
I love that. Yeah. Just so again, just in the circle that I run with, there's a group called the National At Home Dad Network. And David, if you really like that phrase, I have a shirt that says "Dads Don't Babysit." So you can pick up that shirt.
Oh, really? I need to get that T-shirt as well.
Yeah. And the cool
do you have
thing
a promo code for me?
Yeah, I'll try and get it. I'll see what I can do. I know
that's awesome. Love it.
But Jeff, now you can wear that shirt and be like, look, I listen.
Yeah, I surely won't wear one that says "Pops don't babysit" because that's the part of the benefits of being a grandpa. We get to babysit and hand it back off. But as a dad, he's right. We don't babysit.
Love it, Jeff. Thank you very much for that. David, talk about how we can be present and engaged with family time despite the demands of your job. Any tips for, how you manage it that you have found success? Because like you said earlier, like there are certain things you failed at, but you've gotten better from your experience. I remember, like I've mentioned this all the time. One of my daughter's sixth grade teachers said the acronym for fail is first attempt in learning. We're going to fail a couple of times. We're not going to get it right away. Right. So talk a little bit about what you've experienced and how you balance work and life, sir.
Yeah, that's another place that there are definitely times and seasons that I feel like I struggle a little bit more with this than I do others. But I would say that, from the very beginning, I've actually known my purpose. Take an even step back. I mean, also 6 kids, and there's a big age gap between myself and the youngest. So I've been around children my entire life. I've been to all the events, the sports games, the band competitions, everything, you name it. So I've known from the very beginning. In fact, I remember my first interview with a company called Corporate Executive Board, which became Gartner. The hiring manager asked me a question: "Where do you see yourself in 15 years?" My immediate response was "Great father, great husband." And she stared at me like, "You're young." I was like, "Yeah, but that's my purpose. Everything else is going to happen as a result." So knowing that, I've always told myself that I know that I'm also someone who's professionally driven and I want to accomplish incredible things professionally. And I'm going to need to ensure that I fill my cup personally as much as professionally in order for me to be a well-rounded at both. I can't let one lag. So I place some specific priorities on what I'm doing and where I hold sacred in my calendar. So for example, my 6-year-old is just getting into all the sports, every single sport that he could possibly get into. And I'm coaching multiple of them. And there's no way that I will prioritize a sales conversation, a board meeting, a whatever in over the top of a game. I will always be at that game, whether if I'm coaching or not. So we do that pretty frequently in the mornings. I've got my morning routine. I get up, I have a little me time, get some exercise in, but then my 6-year-old wakes up and he's my early bird, and it's just him and I together for the first hour. When I don't have that because of work travel, I'm off tilt. I like that routine. I like being grounded with my family around, even though a lot of family time can make anyone a little stressed. But I'm pretty grounded, right? So there are parts of my routine that I've built into my routine to ensure that even amidst the hustle and bustle of a normal average workday, there are kind of the bookends of those work days it's time for them. And I'm going to shut it all off and I'm going to be present in that moment, no matter if it's a sport or we're learning how to read or we're potty training or I'm watching my 6-year-old and 3-year-old scream at each other. So I think it's just finding that time, holding it sacred. And then on top of that, bring that back into the workplace with your team, right? So if you are, whether you're managing a team directly, whether you are on a team of other people who are parents, understanding when people have time with their family and let them have that time and openly talk about how important it is for them to have that time, and letting them know if you can take anything off their plate so that they can have that and feel fulfilled. That's also important as well.
Love it. Couple things. I love the fact that you're coaching your kids. I've coached my daughter's basketball team, softball teams, all that good stuff. Do you have like a co-coach, or is it just you?
I do. So in baseball, we've got 4 coaches. And so I've been coaching my 6-year-old since T-ball, since the kids were 4 years old, right? Can't throw a ball. And I find that if you have any less than 4 coaches, which sounds ridiculous, right? But you got 4 coaches for first graders. It actually allows you to break it up really nicely, that you got little groups of 3 or 4 in a squad learning a new skill and not just like trying to wrestle with each other in the outfield. Lots of coaches.
No, it's good, because I always felt like I would say like, oh, hey, when you're dribbling, you got to jump off your left foot if you're going for a layup. My daughter would be like, yeah, whatever, dad, and not do it. But then the other coach would say something and they listen like,
Yes.
okay. And then second thing, if you have a timeout, as your kids progress in age, you're going to have parents who are going to be like really like trying to coach their own kids, even though they're not the coach.
Yeah.
with the different athletes I've had, men and women. I remember I had Brandy Chastain on, obviously famous US soccer player, right?
Mhm.
She said she was coaching her daughter's soccer team and people were coming up and trying to overcoach her. I'm like, why was that? Like, I can understand people trying to overcoach me. Overcoach her? I'm like, no, I don't think so. So I just wanted to share, if you ever have that experience, even the
Oh, yeah.
professionals get that.
Yes, 100%. We've been lucky in that even in basketball and baseball, we've had relatively the same group of kids and
Okay.
parents.
Nice.
And the kids have progressed, so we get a little bit of the hands-off treatment. They trust us at this point in time. But I mean, yeah, you have all the parents screaming from the stands, and their kids don't know whether to look at their parents or me, and we'll fight that battle for a while.
One last thing, when my oldest, she was on her basketball team, she told me and another coach, like, coach, we took a timeout because they needed to like score one more point. Like, we got this. We came up with our own play during free time at practice. We're like, and it worked, and they scored. I was like, our job here is done. We're good. So I love that.
That's great. That's
Um,
awesome.
Malcolm, your book, I gotta say congratulations on the success of your book, Dear Star Baby. It obviously has a great message to it. It means a lot to your family. Jeff, before we started recording, even said that, he kind of tested out with some of the kids and his family and all that, and they loved it. And I think one of the ways you can bond with your kids at an early age and talk about tough subjects is through music or through reading. And so your book definitely, accomplishes that fact. So talk a little bit about your book, and then also too, with you, like you said, you have a lot of different passions. So how do you balance obviously promoting a book, doing your job, being a family man, all that good stuff? Will you mind sharing that, sir?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, Dear Star Baby comes out of this place of you know certainly my own personal experience, but and also what I learned about the other what seemed to be commonalities in other people's experiences.
Yeah.
But one thing in particular that I love to highlight when I talk about the book, especially the title of the book, is that the one thing I saw that was a major common thread among folks that have had miscarriages or other types of earlier pregnancy loss is that the babies oftentimes they don't have names yet given to them by their families, and so and I started to realize, well, society doesn't have a name for them either, right? And so we have like rainbow babies, which are the children that are born after a loss, but we didn't have a universal name for the babies that we did lose, and so that was at the core of really what I was thinking about as I was writing this. Is it's kind of, yes, an honoring of the babies that we lost, but then wanting all of the babies to have a name that we can kind of anchor on. The other thing that I really kind of touch on in the book, or that was kind of a part of my journey, was the wondering and the wondering that goes along with having a loss, because I found that throughout my processing that the hardest thing for me was coming to grips with this kind of future reality that I had already set up in my mind that was now not going to happen. And so so I had to kind of ask myself all those questions. What did you look like? What would you have been like? What sort of things would we have done together, right? And all those, coming to kind of grips with the reality that that we wouldn't have those moments, right? Uh, and then I guess kind of the final one that I really touch on, I'm maybe giving away the whole book now, but also the different ways that we grieve. And so I really wanted to kind of touch on that in the book, in a way in that we do grieve differently, and that is something that is kind of underscoring the narrative that that Dear Star Baby presents. in order, and I forgot your second question.
Well, first, before I get into the second question, again, maybe you gave away the plot and idea, but I think the illustrations, the words, your own words, people should definitely check out the book. Where, like, besides like Amazon, all that stuff, is there a main place you would love to like kind of tell people to go right now, like your site, or where's the best place that you would like people to purchase your book?
Yeah. So the book is published by kind of a mid-sized publisher called Beaming Books. And they also graciously offered that for a limited time after this podcast airs, that anyone who goes through and purchase the book from beamingbooks.com using a coupon code can get 30% off. So I'll make sure to have that coupon code maybe for you. Maybe we can include it in show notes or whatever.
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
But yeah, please visit beamingbooks.com and search Dear Star Baby there, and purchase from there.
Awesome.
Yeah, Malcolm, if I could jump in too, having read that book, what I enjoyed about your book, and I'm not going to give away much, was that you didn't present it to be like, and then all things were fine after we talked, right? You actually presented that there was somebody else in the family that continued to suffer with it in a different way. And I thought that was really good, because we got to bring some level of reality to these kids when we do go through a loss like that. So I enjoyed that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's I wanted it to be a conversation starter, right? And because yeah, it's hard enough for us as adults to talk about it. But then how do we have these conversations with our children? And, you know, I wanted to kind of make it a little bit easier, hopefully, to have the conversation with not only children, but the entire family. And so if it could be just a starter, then I trust that any families or any individuals that are having this conversation can now, you know, kind of come together and go where they need to go from there.
No doubt. No doubt. Thank you very much. And again, I want to thank Medela and March of Dimes for setting this up and supporting the Art of Father, and just supporting families and fatherhood and motherhood and parenting and families all around. Jeff, you can you talk about what Medela is doing with March of Dimes? Because I bet whatever you guys are going to be doing is going to be a fantastic partnership. But just talk a little bit about what you guys are looking to do.
Yeah, so it's been great to work with March of Dimes. We have a very similar core when it comes to what we do. March of Dimes, you know, being very focused on babies and health, you know, restrictions of mothers during, you know, being pregnant and such. So they're very focused on that, as are we. And we are in a dilemma in the United States right now. We, for the first time, have recorded one of the highest maternal mortality rates in America's history. And here we are seeing all these advancements around us, all these things moving forward, but yet we're seeing a decline in an increase in maternal mortality. So, and you know, it's even more prevalent, unfortunately, in the city that I reside in right now, in Chicago. The south side of Chicago alone has had 7 hospitals closed down. And unfortunately, those are areas where a large population of minorities participate in those communities. So African Americans and Hispanics are dealing with mortality rates at a much higher level than other minority groups, because these impacts in those areas. So we're working closely with March of Dimes to assure that we bring some level of support to these mothers that are pregnant, and these mothers and babies when baby is birthed, to make sure that we could bring down these levels of mortality rate. It's quite alarming if you think about it, Art. And we're just making sure we do the right things. And March of Dimes is on the forefront of this.
Yeah, again, what you guys are doing, what March of Dimes is doing is really great. And again, like you three sharing how to create a positive workplace environment, obviously a great home environment. You all illustrated that beautifully on today's conversation. So again, I hope audience, and whether they're taking this in through YouTube or seeing it through the podcast, understand that there's ways that people can live a healthy balance not just for themselves, but for their families and to work, you know, in their work environment. So thank you very much. Before I let you guys go, I'm going to have Jeff go first because he did this before, and then you guys are going to follow suit. We're going to have to finish off with a Fatherhood Quick Five. So Malcolm and David, you know, I'm going to go through Jeff first, and then Malcolm, you'll go, and then David, you can follow suit. Jeff, you can use the same answer. You can even change up the answers. I don't care, but we're just going to show them how it's done. All right, sir?
All right.
All right. Favorite family movie? Do you guys have one?
Forrest Gump.
Nice. Genre of music you couldn't wait to introduce your kids to?
Oh, for sure, 70s and 80s rock.
Nice.
Late 70s, 80s, all the way.
Nice. Describe the perfect family vacation. Where would it be?
Anywhere that's far from work.
Nice. Favorite board game or any type of card game or whatever game you like to play with your family is?
Monopoly.
Awesome. Nice. As long as there's no boards being thrown, right?
Right.
And lastly, top 3 words you hope your kids would use to describe you as a dad. What would you want them to be?
Loving, supportive, and present.
Awesome. Malcolm, your turn. Ready?
Oh man, all right.
Favorite family movie? Do you guys have one?
The flavor of the month is The Little Mermaid.
Nice. No, that's
Yeah.
perfect because you said it right there. As every dad and mom knows, it comes in spurts. Like you watch things over and over again, and then you're on to the next. So well done. Favorite genre of music you can't wait to introduce your kids to is what?
Jazz.
Okay, well done.
Yeah.
Nice.
And in particular, Pat Metheny is my probably my favorite recording artist. And Pat Metheny and Victor Wooten are my top 2 favorite recording artists. So
Nice.
yeah.
My youngest is a big jazz fan. She plays the alto the alto sax. So nice. Describe the perfect family vacation. Where would it be?
Well, I once visited Copenhagen for but it was like a quick jaunt after a work trip.
Yeah.
And I am really eager to get my family over there.
Awesome. Favorite board game, card game, whatever you guys like to play right now. The flavor of the month is.
Yeah, it's another one. So there's kind of a. I need to say this in 2 parts. So my wife and I we love strategy games, and we've been hooked on this game called Stone Age, which is I don't even know if it's fully in print anymore, but yes, a great strategy game, similar to, you know, your Settlers of Catan or any of those.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
a good one.
So that would be probably our favorite strategy game right now. Then if I kind of bring in the family as a kind of a bigger whole, Maki Koro is it's like this card, kind of a strategy-ish card game that moves a lot quicker.
Nice.
That or what is it? I think it's Untamed Unicorns, I think is the name of it. So those we love those 2.
Nice. Love that.
That sounds like a horror flick.
Yeah, it's
Coming
not
soon to
horror.
theaters near you. No, but like the starter set for Dungeons and Dragons is a great way to get your kids like have some cool imagination and stuff like so. Just what you're saying, strategy games. Okay, and lastly, top 3 words you hope your kids would use to describe you as a dad. What would you want them to be?
So yeah, I would say loving. I would say supportive, and also wise.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, David, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, favorite family movie.
Moana.
Nice. Such a good song. Like it's a good soundtrack. Nice.
A little quick story. I know we're at the Fatherhood Quick Five or whatever it's called. So I knew that I was living my absolute dream, my purpose in life when I came downstairs. My wife's down there, my kids are down there watching Moana, and like they were like kind of bobbing their heads, like even at like a young age. And I was like, and I had this like epiphany on the staircase, like this is exactly where I'm supposed to be in the life I'm supposed to be living. I took it a step further, everybody. I got a Moana fish, the Maui's fish hook, tattooed on my chest. So,
Wow.
luckily, most people will never see that. but
Commitment.
yeah,
I love it.
running joke that at some point in time I have a big Disney mural on my body, which is totally not me, but yeah, love
That's
them.
good.
Love it. That's fantastic. Favorite family, like genre of music. You got me all riled up, man. I can't.
So pop punk.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect family vacation. Where would it be?
I would love to go back to the Highlands of Scotland. Both my boys absolutely love steam trains. My wife and I had a chance to travel there before we had children. It's been our most favorite place to go, and there's a steam train that travels all throughout Scotland. Old school steam train, incredible mountains, stopping in different places, and I think that would just be an all-time trip for the family.
Nice. Favorite family game right now is?
I can't stand board games, going to be honest. They're not my speed. So board games not my thing. And the young one is a little too young. So I think right now we're going to go with, the Nintendo Switch is you can hook it up to the TV. It's like the old school. It's like the new version of the Wii. We play sports and we go downstairs and we get them on. And like my 6-year-old and I are just like profusely sweating at the end of playing a round of volleyball on Wii Sports.
Love it. And top 3 words you hope your kids would use to describe you as dad. What would you want them to be?
All right. So truth be told, it's loving, supportive, and present. And it was incredible because when you said, I'm going to hit you with this quick 5, I had an immediate panic, like, oh my gosh, I'm not prepared. But when you said that question, I knew the words right away. And when you asked Jeff and Jeff said them right away, when you go back and watch this, you'll see me make like an audible, like, oh my gosh, you did the exact same thing that I said. And it was like the answer I was most prepared for. So
awesome.
I would say nailed it.
Awesome. Gentlemen, again, it's been an honor chatting with you. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day. And also a big shout out to March of Dimes and Medela for the work that they're doing. No joke. Follow them on social media. See how you guys can get involved in helping them out. If Giving Tuesday doesn't have to be during the holidays. It can be whatever. So if you want to support people like the March of Dimes and Medela, see how you can do that. And also pick up Malcolm's book. It's a great book. Like, it's a great tool to talk to your kids about something that is really hard in life. Dear Star Baby. So definitely check it out. But again, gentlemen, thank you very much for doing this with me. I hope my audience takes away all the information you guys gave today, because it's very, heartwarming and endearing. So again, I wish you and your families continued success, but thank you so much for jumping on with me today, gentlemen.
Thank you, Art.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Art. And David and Jeff, great to be in your presence.
Great meeting you guys as well.
Likewise.